Hello and welcome to Two Wise Guys. This is Saturday, October 21st, 2017, and I'm your host, Christopher. And across from me in the state of California, in the state of Carolina, South Carolina, I'll get it one of these days. In the state of South Carolina is my co-host, Dan.
Hello.
We just want to welcome you to the show, and we're so glad that you're here with us. Just shoot the breeze. Two wise guys shooting the breeze. This is going to be another one of our unscripted shows where Dan and I don't really know everything that we're going to talk about. We used to do shows that were more planned out, where we had more of a solid idea of what we were going to talk about, and now we'd like to just shoot from the hip and keep things fast and loose. And so we do have a couple topics that we would like to talk about, but other than that, we don't know where this is going to go, and we may not even get to those topics. So that's the beauty of being unscripted, and we are enjoying it. We hope you guys are as well. If you do have any ideas or suggestions or comments to leave with us, just go ahead and leave those in the comments below, or you can contact us on our website, twowiseguys.org. and leave a comment there and in the contact section. We also are on Twitter, and was it under Two Wise Guys Show?
Yep. At Two Wise Guys Show on Twitter.
At Two Wise Guys Show on Twitter. And we are relatively active on our own. Dan has his own blog called Ancient Abandon, where he's the chief editor, the editor-in-chief. Dan, is that blog at ancientabandon.com?
Yes, it is, and I haven't posted the episode for this week, but I started up the Ancient Abandon podcast a couple weeks back. So I think this week I'm actually getting ready to release episode 8, probably tonight or tomorrow. So yeah, it's been going pretty good, and so it's been going pretty good overall.
Oh, fantastic! And speaking of podcasts, we have our own podcast on iTunes, and you can find that by just searching Two Wise Guys. And we are also on SoundCloud, I believe. Is there any other platform that we're on with our podcast, Dan? Or is that
it's on all the big ones. It's on SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn. It's on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Podcasts. I haven't got it on Spotify yet. I don't know if we're going to bother with Spotify because I don't think that's going to be a very big platform. But most podcasters out there will pull from the Apple repository. So if you go and you search for it, a lot of times there's an option that you can check a little box that has it pull from the or search the Apple directory as well, and it'll come up in there.
Great. Well, that's more information than I knew about it. Dan is the sort of the technical guru here, so he's very good at getting a lot of our stuff up, and I really appreciate that because I am technical, but I'm not necessarily inclined or as knowledgeable about all those things. So thanks for that, Dan. Today, I think we kind of had a few topics we're going to throw out there, but one of the things that I've been really excited about is the new Star Wars trailer for Episode VIII that just dropped. I guess it was probably about a little over a week ago, and I remember as soon as it dropped on YouTube, I chatted Dan up and I was like, "Dude, you got to see this! It's so awesome!" And I feel like a lot of I just from watching the trailer, and watching a trailer can be very subjective and very deceptive because, I feel like in the case with the Star Wars trailers, they kind of try to keep it a little bit mysterious and so you're getting just little chunks of the story and try to, keep people guessing, which I think is really fun because a lot of times trailers these days seem like they spoil half of the plot of a movie. And you get the feeling that you didn't even have to go watch the movie. You could have just seen the trailer for all the good bits. But in the case of Star Wars, I feel like they did a really great job with the Episode 7 trailers. Kept it really mysterious, and that seems to have continued over to a great extent with this Episode 8 trailer. I know I had several theories about the origins of Rey, and I feel like after watching this particular trailer, it definitely cast a shadow of a doubt on some of my ideas and some of my theories. I haven't completely abandoned them, but Dan, I want to hear your take on that as well. You can go ahead and touch on whatever part of it piqued your interest the most. But what did you think about the trailer?
I thought it looked really good. I'm really excited about it. And for anyone who hasn't already seen it, I would encourage you to go back and check out the last unscripted episode we did. I think it was episode like unscripted number 2 or something like that. And Chris and I kind of spent about 45 minutes or so just talking about Star Wars because we're a couple of Star Wars geeks and have been for a long time. And so we kind of talked about the upcoming movie and some ideas that we had, kind of made some projections, and pretty much every one of mine, I'm pretty sure, have been destroyed with this trailer. So I'm going to come up with
pretty much shot the hell.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to come up with some new ones. And when we can, I think as it gets closer that we should have an episode where we just kind of dedicate and we say, this is going to be our predictions. We're going to set it aside, and then, there'll be some sort of reward or consequence on the other side of it. So
we're running out of time on that, but I agree. I think last time when we did talk about this, the movie, this was before the trailer came out, of course, and we were like, I felt pretty confident. I know you probably felt pretty confident about some of the things that we predicted, and then this trailer drops and it's like, whoa, wait a second. And it almost made me wonder if the storytellers weren't kind of like messing with the fans, not messing with the fans, but trying to think of, okay, if I was a fan and what I was expecting, let me do the opposite of that, so it's not an obvious story. I did see some comments, some quotes from, I think, Mark Hamill, and also the actress who plays Rey. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but both of them seemed to agree in their quotes that there were going to be a lot of unexpected twists in this movie. And judging from the trailer, just what we've seen so far, that really does seem to be true. Dan, do you think we'll be able to just play the trailer and talk over it, or is that can we do like a screen share?
Yeah, we'll do a screen share of it. I'm not going to play the audio. We did a little test run with the audio going earlier, and all of a sudden all the audio cut out. So I don't know if that was YouTube's way of saying don't play our stuff on your live stream. So we're going to, or maybe it opens some sort of weird paradox with YouTube playing within YouTube. I don't know, but so we're just going to play the video with no audio. Just kind of talk over it. If you want to watch it yourselves, I'll go ahead and post the link right now into the chat room if anyone wants to watch it. So, but we'll go ahead and kick it on there.
One thing I really like about Star Wars, and now that I'm talking, it's cutting out the video, so maybe you just talk.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, man, those new walkers look pretty awesome. I don't know.
I think these scenes are really pretty cool with Rey. Again, as I talk, it looks like I'm cutting out the video. So Dan, maybe you go ahead and say some things.
All right, so what it looks like is we've got a building burning on fire. We've got Luke Skywalker looking terrified of Rey and her power, which while Chris was talking, I think it kind of talked over it so you didn't see it, but she was using the Force, and it split the ground in half, and so she's obviously very, very powerful. Looks like new TIE fighters. CGI Princess Leia looks really good. A lot better than it did in Rogue One, that's for sure. And I don't know what's going on. I don't know if he's going to kill off his mom too, but this looks really intense. It looks really, really good. Really awful CGI for Chewbacca. Yeah, there's my favorite character right there, Poe Dameron. And Luke Skywalker's warning. It sounds like he's warning Rey that it's not going to go the way that she thinks. And just from there's so much going on in this trailer, it's really hard to tell what could possibly be going on. And I'm one of those guys who refuses to go and look at spoilers. Rey's saying that she needs somebody to show her the way in all of this. And there you see Kylo Ren reaching out his hand. So if you go back and you watch our previous episode where we talked about our theories and everything like that, my theories are all just completely destroyed. So, yeah, Chris, I don't know if you want to talk about your ideas on it.
Yeah, I think one of my predominant theories was that given the fact that Star Wars as a story arc, as a grand story arc, has been a tale of the Skywalkers, I felt that Rey had to be a Skywalker somehow. That was sort of like my big theory, and I'm not quite ready to abandon that, even though the certain shots in this trailer seem to throw that into doubt. Definitely, we definitely have one Skywalker, which is what's his name? Han Solo and Princess Leia's son. So doesn't have a Skywalker last name, but he is half Skywalker, albeit from most likely the weaker side, his being Luke's sister's son. But I think that I'm not ready to pass on that yet. Luke did look pretty scared of of Rey in that shot, and it didn't seem like he was looking at her in the way or would treat her the way that possibly a relative would treat her, unless he's like her uncle, maybe, or that'd be my only thing. I definitely didn't get the feeling that he was her father, which was one of my early theories. I thought, this could be Luke Skywalker's kid that he had with, some Jedi wench somewhere that we don't know about, and that would seem to sort of like tie in with what's been read and written about in some of the extra canonical books or whatever. I don't even know how to refer to those, but
expanded universe.
So I believe there was some sort of a love connection there where Luke and was it Mara Jade or somebody?
Yeah, Mara Jade. She was a Sith apprentice at one point or something like that. It was in one of the games. I can't remember which game it was. One of the old games from like the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, so gosh, it disappoints me in a way, but then in a way I'm not disappointed because, okay, what could this be? Maybe it's something better that, I haven't even thought about. Maybe Rey is another theory is maybe Rey is the Princess Leia's daughter, like the twin of Kylo. So I don't know. I mean, that's a possibility. It was interesting though, because in the first movie, the thing that made me think that that's not a possibility is that Han Solo appeared to have no recognition of her, and he's like, you can join my crew and blah blah blah, just kind of like, this is a dangerous mission, you might not want to bring your daughter on. So if Rey was potentially Han Solo's daughter, then yeah, he would probably have a little bit more recognition, as would Princess Leia. But who knows, maybe stranger things have happened so in the Star Wars universe. What do you think, Dan?
All right, I lost track of what you were saying. I was putting something in the chat room there.
I was kind of laying out the second part of my theory. The first part being that my original theory was that Rey was Luke Skywalker's daughter, who he had, gone into exile and just separated himself from her. Or their theory number two was that Rey could possibly be the daughter of Han Solo and Princess Leia, so she would be the sister of Kylo Ren, which I felt is probably not possible, just given the reactions, unless the reactions from Han and Leia in the most recent movie.
I don't know. I don't think she's Luke's daughter or anything like that. I think that would be too predictable, and I don't necessarily think that that's what they're going for with the series. I mean, we kind of all saw the killing off of Han Solo coming. As soon as they walked into the big chamber there, and you see the bridge, like, okay, he's getting ready to die. But I think it's a little too predictable for the way that they're making this next movie, especially with all the twists and turns that we've seen in the trailer, which obviously doesn't always give you the full picture with the Star Wars movies as to what's going to be happening. But I kind of feel like she is completely separate from the Skywalker line. Like, I don't know, like almost like she's like the next Anakin kind of character, you know?
Born from the Force. I had a talk with my wife and who also watches Star Wars, and she felt that that could be another story arc where Rey is this, like that second coming. She's born of the Force.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, I did at one point think, well, maybe she is Han and Leia's daughter. But yeah, the way that they kind of interact, I feel like they would have made it a bit more clear, you know, especially like when she first arrives and they're like, "Our long lost daughter's back," you know, kind of thing. But,
Yeah, that'd be your reaction if you hadn't seen somebody like that for a while. But it is odd that she's on the same planet, that the Millennium Falcon happens to be on the same planet in the same vicinity of where she lives and was growing up. Because she's, you know, when they're escaping the attack of the Imperial attack, her and Finn are escaping the Imperial attack on Jakku. They're just running, and then she's like, "There's the Millennium Falcon. Let's go ahead and fly it." You know, how did the Millennium Falcon get on that planet? And more importantly, how did Han Solo lose the Millennium Falcon? Perhaps questions that'll be answered during the story arc. I don't know, but it does seem a little odd that she's on the same planet.
yeah, I mean, they kind of did a good job of explaining how the Millennium Falcon got to be on the planet that she was on, though.
Did they?
At least I thought. Yeah, because when Han and Chewie got back on the Millennium Falcon, they started asking, you know, who had the Millennium, who had the ship, and she was explaining who got it and who stole it from who and how it got to be there. So they kind of, you know, it was a kind of a throwaway explanation of how they got there, but you know, they talked about it in that one.
Okay. Well, another thing too is the vision that she has in the first movie as it relates to the lightsaber. So Anakin's lightsaber, Anakin's original blue lightsaber, which was lost by Luke when he was in Cloud City and had his hand cut off. That lightsaber fell down the chute in Cloud City and disappeared into the planet. So this lightsaber reappears in the film, and the person who happens to have the lightsaber in her basement in a locked chest says that the lightsaber is looking, or is like looking, I can't, I'm not quoting exactly here, but she's like, it's looking for its owner or something like that, and it opens for her, and all of a sudden she has this vision of Darth Vader. And this is just sort of coming to me right now as we were talking about concepts of where Rey came from. Here's another one for you. What if she's Anakin Skywalker's daughter? What if Anakin Skywalker was able to, after he became Darth Vader at some point, have another relationship with someone else and have another child, unbeknownst to everyone else, and this child grows up, on this remote planet nobody knows about, because that would be the only other way I could explain that a Skywalker lightsaber would be drawn to her, because I feel like that's more than just a coincidence. It's like, it would just be too, it wouldn't make any sense if that lightsaber was drawn to anyone other than a Skywalker, given the fact that Luke is still alive. He was actually in possession of that lightsaber when it was given to Ben Kenobi, which was given to him when he first met Ben. So I just feel like there's some sort of connection there. And that's why I'm saying I'm not ready to give up on the idea that she is somehow a Skywalker.
That's an interesting theory. I hadn't thought about that one. That's really good, though. I mean, you could take it a step further to try and figure out, because, I mean, he got burned from head to toe. I'm pretty sure that, you know, his stuff ain't working anymore.
Artificial insemination, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, they had the clone technology. Why not?
Yeah, sure. Oh, that's another one too. Yeah, cloning. But you would just take like the DNA and just to make a brand new human. And I think in a way that explains the extraordinary power that she possesses, given the fact that, you know, when you watch the prequels, they do that little DNA test on Anakin when they first find him on Tatooine. Mm-hmm. His numbers are off the chart. That's what Obi-Wan says to Qui-Gon, and that kind of would make a little bit of sense if she's able to wield this extraordinary power, if she's the true, like the daughter of, you know, the chosen one.
Yeah, I think that's a good explanation. That's a viable option they might go for.
and it's not something that people would see coming. You know, and it would be so easy to pull off because of exactly what you said. There's so many ways in the future with the technology they have, even if Darth Vader wasn't physically able to, you know, reproduce through normal means, it would be entirely imaginable and possible to do it, you know, another way.
Yeah, I think that's a good explanation. I'm just excited to see it. I can't wait for it to come out. I don't know. I think that there's a lot of good stories that are going to come out of it, and honestly, I feel like they're starting to kind of lay the groundwork for more of these standalone spin-off movies that they've kind of been already working on with, with Rogue One and with the Han Solo movie coming up, and I think there's a Boba Fett movie in the works and all sorts of different ones like that. So I mean, they could easily make a spin-off movie for. I'd like to see one of like Poe Dameron and his squadron, you know, like kind of like the old Rogue Squadron video games. Yeah. I think they could do a really, really good job with those.
I feel like that would be really cool. And it'd be almost like Rogue One Part 2 or something, because that's the beginning of Rogue Squadron. So then that would be like the continuation of it. But I think that I'm really excited about the spin-offs as well. But just sort of gearing back into the trailer, there were a couple other interesting scenes that really caught my attention, and I just couldn't get away from the fact that this guy Snoke seems to be after her more than he's after Kylo. I almost feel like I got the feeling from, and I wouldn't have said that before I saw the trailer, so let me just lay that out there. But after seeing the trailer, at the very beginning of it, we hear Snoke's voice saying, basically saying that he was looking for this person, and then it immediately cuts to a shot of Rey holding the lightsaber on the island, and that's what first got it started. And then later on, towards the end of the trailer, we see that she's in the same room as Snoke, and he's sort of using his dark side powers on her in some sort of a way as she struggles against him. And it makes me just think of I don't know if you ever played the video game, the Knights of the Old Republic video games, but in the first Knights of the Old Republic, which remains one of the classic video game stories ever told, in my opinion, there's the main character, or one of the main characters is a woman, and she's, you know, totally light side. She totally is like all about the Jedi Order, and then she gets trapped with one of the Dark Lords of the Sith, and she eventually, you know, succumbs to his power and becomes a Dark Jedi herself, because she was subjected to like basically torture and all these things, and it just sort of, she eventually broke. And I'm almost thinking, what if it's a similar situation to where Snoke is after Rey because of her power. He knows that she would be the perfect apprentice to eventually take his role as the Dark Lord of the Sith. And I'm stepping out on a limb here, assuming that he's Sith, but I think that's pretty obvious. But I think, what if he uses his power on her, as we see in that brief segment in the trailer, and he's attempting to show her just how powerful she could be, if not more powerful, because he's using it on her as an example.
Yeah, I think it's a good possibility as well. And a little side note, because you mentioned Knights of the Old Republic, which was one of my favorite video games of all time, and I think it's still one of the best Star Wars games ever made. And I haven't shown this to very many people, but I think you'd probably get a kick out of it and appreciate it. There you go.
Yes.
Darth Revan right there.
Revan.
Yes. For those of you who are listening on audio, it's an old action figure. It came out in the mid-2000s of it was a fan edition that Lucas asked, or Lucas Arts, or whoever it was, the company that makes them, asked the fans who they would like to see made into an action figure, and Revan won. So he's my favorite character in Star Wars. But no, Snoke is curious to me. I don't know if I think he's Sith, but I don't think he's going to be Sith in the same way that we would expect. He's not going to be the same thing as like the Emperor. I think that he's going to, because they made a reference in Episode 7 to the Knights of Ren and Kylo being the leader of that. I think they're going to kind of explain that a bit more in this movie and help us to understand it a bit more, because I'm curious about them. But Another thing that I think is interesting is, I don't know if you picked up on it. There's a scene where there was a scene at the beginning, or towards, I think, the middle of it, when they showed Princess Leia on the starship and it was under attack by Kylo Ren and his forces. That scene with Kylo Ren piloting his fighter and going through, and it showed him in the cockpit with the scar on his face. It was very, very reminiscent of Anakin at the beginning of Episode 3.
That's very true. Yeah, I did pick up on that. That was interesting. Same hair, similar hair. You know, they got that scar, all the dark garbs. Mean look.
I thought it was pretty cool. But yeah, I don't know what I was going to say there. But I don't know. I think it's really cool. I think it's going to be a really good. I think it's going to be a really good movie when it comes out. And I don't usually waste the money going to see things in 3D, but this might be worthwhile to go see it in.
Yeah, I watched the first one. I watched the previous film, Episode VII, in 3D, and somewhat against my better judgment, but it was fantastic. I mean, I watched it at the Chinese theater here in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, California, which is like this massive, massive, massive screen. It's an amazing theater if you ever do get to visit it. I actually watched Interstellar and in that theater on 70-inch film, and it was just absolutely amazing, blown away. And they have all this great memorabilia there from every movie that they actually play. But that's the side note. But I really think that Kylo, wouldn't it be an interesting thing? How crazy would this be if Kylo can't bring himself? Because we see that shot in the trailer where he's obviously in the fighter, he's in the TIE fighter, and he's flying into the ship where we presume that's where his mother is. They're intercutting shots of him and Princess Leia. And what if he gets to that point where he's about to, destroy her and complete his journey to the dark side? He's killed off every sort of tie, if you will, to his goodness, basically cutting off his soul or whatever to all things that are good. What if he gets to that point and he just can't bring himself to do it? And we see him we see like a role reversal where he's begins his journey back to the light, and we see Rey getting captured, presumably, or going to face Snoke before she's ready. And I'm out on a limb here because there's only one shot where they're in the same room, but she's gone to find him and to kill him or whatever. And she ends up becoming seduced by the dark side. So we have a flip-flop there where Kylo Ren ends up light and she ends up dark.
The double turn. That'd be awesome. I think that's a good possibility as well. And as you were talking about the whole scene with Kylo Ren and Princess Leia, it brings a kind of an interesting concept. Remember the relationship that Anakin had with his mother, the way that, like the look that they put on his face, if that is in fact the scene where he's preparing to kill his mother, it kind of puts you back into that perspective of how Anakin wiped out an entire tribe of the Sand People in order to avenge his mother and everything like that, because it showed that he deeply cared for her. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if they play on that at all, because it seems like that obviously Kylo Ren wants to be as powerful as Darth Vader, and so he's taking steps to make himself more like Vader, and I kind of wonder if they'll touch on that at all. Because I feel like they're doing a good job of referencing the original trilogy and referencing the prequels without actually necessarily being overt about it, and they're trying to kind of tie it together, because it's kind of like this cyclical kind of concept that everything in the universe is happening in sequence with one another.
Yeah, I like that too, and it's not like overbearing as far as like the references back to the original trilogy. It's it's allowing these movies to stand on their own. And I think that's a great point that you brought up about Kylo and sort of referencing that back to Anakin and his mother. And it sort of illustrates the child's bond with the mother, being much different than that with the father, and possibly even stronger with the mother. So yeah, I definitely think that, looking at it through that lens as well, just makes it even that much more believable that he might not be able to he just might not be able to pull the trigger. He doesn't have that much evil coursing through him to where he could do that. Because you watch the films and he just seems so tortured. It's like he's like that adolescent almost. He's a little older than that, but almost this like post-teen adolescence where he didn't have his parents were sort of off running the republic, and he didn't really get the attention that he probably deserved from them, and he's sort of jealous of that and angry at them at the same time. Yet here he is, he's been trained in the Force, and he's realized he could have so much more power, and he's given into the draw of the dark side because of that power. But at his core, he is still a good person, but he just craves power. He craves that dominance and sort of that vengeance, if you will, for what he perceived as a bad upbringing. And again, these are all just possibilities. But when you look at it from that standpoint, if that is true, then how could you bring yourself to kill your own mother? I mean, you got your dad because you're just under the spell of this Sith Lord or Night Lord or whatever he is, whatever Snoke is. Yet, we have your mother here, and she's the person where your Force bond has come from. He would not be Force adherent, or he would not be Force sensitive, most likely, if it wasn't for her. So, the Skywalker blood that he has.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I mean, I think we have some pretty cool ideas for it, but then again, it could just be completely different than anything we're thinking, and we'll have to come back and be like, well, we were wrong. So,
hearing Anakin, or excuse me, Luke, or not Luke, Mark Hamill talk about it too. You could just sense his excitement. I've seen watched a few interviews of him, and he's definitely said, they've taken the films back in a direction where he didn't anticipate, as if Mark Hamill is like the authority on Star Wars just because he acted as Luke Skywalker, I guess. But so it's obviously not in the direction that he would have seen things going, being who he is. But I'm hoping that they keep it in the Skywalker realm somehow. I really think that, just the Darth Vader connection with Rey being a real distinct possibility, given the information that we have from the first movie, and from what we've seen, possibly from what we've seen in the second film. And how crazy would it be, or a surprise for Luke Skywalker himself to find out, hey, this is my younger sister, if that is what it is, Mm-hmm. Or maybe he does know, and that's why he's like, this is not going to turn out how you think, or I don't know. But there's definitely a lot of mystery here. I'd love to find out, just like you would, who these Knights of Ren are, how what is their relationship to the Sith, if any, and sort of like what is their function in this Star Wars galaxy.
And I want to see some Star Destroyers getting blown up. I'm very easy to please in that way.
And no more Death Stars, at least for this one, right? There's no more Death Stars, I don't think.
I hope not. I mean, I don't think there's going to be any more Death Stars, to be honest. And I know technically Starkiller Base was not a Death Star, but it was a Death Star.
Yeah, it was a very big Death Star.
It was a planet-sized Death Star. So,
quickly before we sort of transition, because I feel like that's probably what we're about to do, but any theories on how this lightsaber of Anakin's was recovered from the planet that it fell into? Because if I'm not mistaken, Cloud City, where the lightsaber was lost, was a gas giant planet. Where did this lightsaber come from? How did this lady, or whatever that creature is in that film, how did she get this thing? Who picked it up? Was it Boba Fett or something? I don't know.
I don't know. I've never really thought about it, because I remember in 7 she was like, that's a story for another time, and I was like, okay, whatever. There's too much other stuff going on. But yeah, I never really.
I'm just like, I need answers. Like, you can't just leave that thing there and not give me. And it better not be some cruddy, like, just like what they did with the Millennium Falcon. We just left it and then somebody took it or something. The Force willed it back up and it floated into space, and then somebody grabbed it. I mean,
it probably got like lodged in some cabana gas harvester thing, and they had to do some maintenance, and they were like, hey, look what I found. Oh no, I lost an arm.
Some stormtroopers doing like maintenance on there, and you like, this lightsaber just pops out. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, maybe. That's
And
my theory.
Turns out he gave it back to Darth Vader, and he had it the whole time.
Oh, that'd be weird. That'd be really weird.
But who knows? I feel like that's a story in of itself, and it would be a shame if they don't expound on that a little bit more, because I feel like there's a lot of intrigue that is to be offered. I mean, just from somebody who, like, I really enjoy a good story. I really enjoy a good mystery. I grew up reading Hardy Boys and, you know, Star Wars and all these different things, and I always love the mystery aspect of, like, what's going to happen, and you get to the end and you're surprised. And I think that kid in me, that mystery kid in me, really wants to have these. And all of us, I think, a lot of us Star Wars fans are the same in that way. The child in us comes out, and we're like really looking forward to seeing all these things. So I'm just kind of hoping that they don't disappoint us with this. But I think they won't. I think it'll be really good, just like the first or the seventh installment.
Well, I don't, and as far as the lightsaber goes, I don't think they even need to try and cram it into the movie. I feel like that would be too much, and it would be taking away from the rest of the storyline. They could even just do like a little animation thing and put it up on StarWars.com or YouTube or something, and just be like, "Hey, here's how we found the lightsaber," and it's like, "Oh, okay, cool," you know. They could
What
do
if it's
something
like a George Lucas thing where he goes back and edits the special editions, and then when Luke is like hanging from that vein, and you see the lightsaber fall, or if that's his gun or whatever, it kind of does this little arc and then shoots back up into like the Tabana gas chamber, where it's later to be found by the stormtrooper. It's like a post edit to the special editions.
Yeah, no, let's not do that.
Okay.
But before we move on, one more thing that I'm surprised we didn't talk about before, but it would be horrible of us to not mention him. What about Finn?
Finn is great. He grew on me. You know, when I saw the first teaser trailers for the seventh installment, The Force Awakens, I was kind of like, who is this guy? Like, why is he here? Why is he dressed in a stormtrooper? And why is he talking to these people like he's their friend? But he really grew on me during that first film. I think the actor did a great job with him too. And I wasn't expecting to like him. I mean, and maybe that's just the negative sort of feeling I've had about all the other prequels, the other movies and the characters that have come out with those movies in general. But he seems really interesting because I feel like he's like discovering himself, and you see that scene in the eighth film trailer where he's fighting. Was that Captain Phasma?
Mm-hmm.
So. And it looked like they were locked in some sort of like a sword battle or something. I don't know what that was, but I think seeing him develop, I in fact wouldn't even be surprised to see him turn into some sort of a force sensitive at some point. But I don't know if they'll go that direction. But at the very least, he's a very great hero and sort of like a sidekick to Rey, and a really nice little bit of comic relief and friendly stuff, I guess.
I really liked him in Episode 7. He was one of my favorite characters in the movie. Because, like you said, I think he's funny. He brought a lot of. It was interesting just watching that first scene in 7 where he brought a lot of emotion to the character without having to say anything, and he was able to do it in a way that it helped you to look at him and say, okay, there's a lot going on within this character's mind. He hasn't said a single word, but he's clearly struggling with what the First Order's commanding him to do. And, you kind of start seeing that development happen in the first movie where, in 7, I should say, the first movie of this trilogy, I should say so, where he really starts becoming more and more courageous, because he starts becoming more brave as he's trying to help Rey and help her, help save her from captivity. And in this one, he looks like he's becoming much more of a confident warrior and soldier. And I mean, I could see in Episode 9 him being like a commando in the Resistance or something like that, because they're really looks like they're really working on developing him as a strong character who has gotten past his fear of the First Order and is moving on to becoming more of a hero.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And just seeing him develop throughout that first film, and from what we've seen, the small clips, the small sample size we've seen from this trailer, seeing him develop into something much more. I agree with you. I think, and I think that he is definitely a very important character in this whole thing. But they really, I hope that they tie the group together just a little bit more than the first installment. And here's why: because I always liked the campy dynamic, the campy humorous dynamic that was achieved with the first films, the original films, between the trio of Han, Luke, and Leia. And I feel like in this film series, we have Rey, we have Finn, and looks like Poe is sort of like the Han Solo type of guy. So I really hope they get into some more situations together, similar to what we saw from that first film. But it does look like they're going to be separated at different points as well, just from clips we've seen. So, but I do like that, and I just, on the comedy side note there, I really like what they've done with the comic relief, if you will, in these films. I like the personality of the droids. I like BB-8, how he's, just this little guy who doesn't even speak, but he's able to communicate so much, just like what they did with R2. If not, I feel like they're even doing a better job here, just because of better technology and things like that. And I think we've seen films like WALL-E, where a droid who doesn't talk can have so much personality and communicate so much emotion with almost no human characteristics. So I feel like there's even a little bit borrowed from that film in the realm of BB-8. So I really like that. And from a group standpoint, we have Chewie in there as well, who we noticed was a little bit CGI'd in that shot. I don't know. Maybe it was him in the suit. But I don't know. It was, the screen size was so small I couldn't tell. But as far as Princess Leia being CGI, do you think she was CGI there? Because I know that she didn't pass until filming had finished on this particular episode. So she looked pretty real to me. But you're sure that she was CGI?
No, I thought this was done after she had passed away. So maybe that's why it looked so good, because it was the actual person. But
You're like, that CGI shit looks fantastic on Leia.
And I was like, man, this is so much better than Rogue One. But
yeah, because I remember reading several articles when she did pass, and they were mentioning that filming was either just wrapping up or had already wrapped up at that point, and there was that's when the questions were arising, how they would move on without her.
Well, maybe they will have Kylo Ren kill her off, and that way that's her exit from the trilogy, and they don't have to worry about the CG. Because honestly, I feel like the CG and the characters especially the human characters, is not going to go well. They did okay with Tarkin and Rogue One, but that only after the first few times of seeing him, you kind of get used to him. But I'm not a fan of this whole, trying to make the main characters in the movie be computer generated, while, especially the major characters. Like, everybody knows Princess Leia, and so you see her and you're like, that's not real, and it's really kind of creepy.
Yeah, but with Tarkin, he's a little less familiar, and we only saw him for brief moments in the original series, the original film series. So when you do see him here, it's like, I buy that, because you don't remember. The only thing was just like the speaking. You see a little bit of like unnaturalness in the skin movement in the mouth and all that type of stuff. But it's very, very, very close, very, very realistic. They did a fantastic job with him, and I think, as I mentioned before in our other episode where we talked about Star Wars, I feel like it's easier to do an accurate CG or a fake and accurate CG character when you have this intense dark lighting and dark and light shadows and all that stuff, where you can kind of cover up your mistakes or the things that you're not doing as well. Where like the Death Star kind of has that sort of atmosphere, and it's like, well, we can keep him in the shadows for half the time and you won't even notice that he's a CGI dude. So, but whereas with Leia, she's wearing this white outfit, with the hood, and she's on a white ship. Everything's like lit fluorescently, and you can't miss the fact that she is not a real human being. But anyway, I digress. So, anything else we want to touch on with the trailer? Anything else that stuck out to you?
No, I don't think so. I think we got it pretty good. I think those new walkers look really awesome, though. I'm looking forward to seeing what they're doing with those.
What were those? I missed that.
Oh, it was. You might have been talking when they played them. I've already lost it, but they look like modified AT-AT walkers or something like the big ones from Hoth, but they look like they're much heavier armored and stuff. They look really really cool. Um, there's going to be a link in the show notes to the trailer. I tried to put it into the chat room for everyone to be able to click on, but apparently you can't post links in the chat room. So
Which
once
is
this
probably
is
a good
done,
idea. People would post all kinds of stuff.
yeah. So yeah, once I get the show notes up on our site, then people can go there and just click it, or they can just search YouTube for Episode 8 trailer.
Fantastic. Well, I'm excited. I know, Dan, you're excited. We are huge Star Wars nerd fans, and we just totally geek out when all this stuff comes out. I mean, since the day I ever first saw Star Wars when I was a little kid, when I saw it, I didn't even see the movie. I saw it on a TV for like a commercial that they were going to play on the TV, and I was like, what is this? This is so cool. I've been hooked. So on that note, well, we've already been filming for about 50 minutes here. I feel like we could maybe chat about like one subject. Is there any? Why don't you pick the subject since I brought up the Star Wars first, and then we can use that subject and sort of wrap up right after that.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna go with. We'll do this one. Sorry, I got a few topics here. I kind of brought this one up to you, Chris, a little bit here and there, and I'm not sure if anyone else has really heard about it, but I'm on the fence, and so I want to talk to you and get your thoughts on it. And anybody else who has thoughts on it too, you can leave us a comment or something. But there's this new trend of these websites that are starting to run like browser-based cryptocurrency miners, and they're JavaScripts that are built into the web page that when you go to the website, it uses a portion of your GPU or your CPU's the amount of CPU that you're using. So if you're using Chrome or Firefox or something, and you pull up your task manager and you start looking at the resources that are being used, you might see like, you're using 10% of your CPU, and then you go to a different website and that might spike up a bit to 15 or 20%, and that's because that particular site might be using a JavaScript cryptocurrency miner. And so this one is for the Pirate Bay. I don't go to the Pirate Bay. I don't do torrents except for ISO images of operating systems and stuff. But this one's just a story about the Pirate Bay, and it's basically that they were discovered to be running this script in the background to mine something called Monero. It's right there. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it. It's an alternative to Bitcoin, but it's less traceable than Bitcoin is, basically. And I've done a lot of digging around on it, trying to figure out more about it. There's another article that I'll post on the show notes as well from AdGuard. It's an antivirus, an anti-ad thing, like an ad blocking software. But they did a study to find that it's being used on, I think it's 220 of the top 100,000 websites. And over the course of 3 weeks, they were able to generate $43,000 worth of revenue for those websites. And mostly the ones that are running it, because they don't tell you that they're running it, most of them are the more shady kind of websites like torrent sites, pirating sites, adult websites and stuff like that. There's a percentage down here for them. TV, video. So this would be like streaming sites and stuff like that. I don't think that would be Netflix or Hulu, like the main ones, but like a lot of those kind of off-the-grid ones that you would go to if you're trying to pirate stuff. File sharing sites, news and media and adult and stuff is on there. So I'll have these in the show notes for anyone who's interested, but I think it's an interesting concept. I'm not a big fan of these sites just doing it on their own, because I feel like, I wouldn't want someone just taking control of my own stuff. But, as far as I can understand it, and from the security researchers that I've read up from who have talked about this subject, it's not any kind of security risk to the user, because it's not actually running anything on your computer. It's running it through the browser. It's a script that's using just a portion of your CPU to help the site to mine this cryptocurrency. So basically, it's a way of generating revenue that the only thing it's doing is it's using up a little bit of the clock speed on your processor. And the more I've been thinking about it, and the more I've been listening to people who know more about the subject than I do, the more I'm starting to kind of be convinced that maybe this is a good way that we could go in the future, as far as running things on the internet. So giving people the option to opt in to, you go to a website like Wikipedia, for example. I think we all use Wikipedia. And while we're there, you can go in and you say, little thing pops up on the screen and says, we'd like to use a portion of your processor in order to generate revenue for Wikipedia. And maybe find a better way to say it than that, obviously. And then you can be able to click yes or no. And then if you click yes, it just puts a cookie on your computer so that it tells the site automatically when you go back there that you've agreed to allow them to mine on your computer. And that way it generates money for them. It can do away with ads, so we don't have to deal with ads anymore. And if you click no, then you get ads, kind of thing. That's just some ideas, some thoughts. But I'm probably looking at it through rose-colored glasses because I think it's actually kind of a good idea, even though I know it's kind of creepy and it's not really my typical view on these kind of things. But Chris, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I found it interesting when you brought that up and you were saying, oh, I think it's kind of cool because it's kind of the opposite reaction that I would anticipate you would have. Your backgrounds in being, in security and all that type of stuff. I think it's interesting that here's my stance on it is I wouldn't have a problem with it if they let you know. So it's like you sort of have that little checkbox at the beginning where, how you accept cookies when you go on a site. It'd be the same type of thing. You get the little pop-up that says, you mind if we use like 20 or 40% of your processor while you're visiting our site? It'll help pay for free viewing with no ad-free viewing. And I don't think I would have a problem with that. I'd probably click yes. So I get no ads in my viewing. But if it's the situation where, it's just sort of being done in the background and I'm not even being told about it, all of a sudden I hear my computer's fan, kind of going up and I'm just like, oh, what's going on here? That would bother me. And the thing that bothers me most about it is because it's something that's being done to my property that I wasn't made aware of. I don't really have any kind of a good thing to compare it to, but it just makes me feel like, gives you that icky feeling like if you ever had something taken from you or stolen out of your car or from some like part of your private property that is not normally accessible to the public, you have this icky feeling of like, man, somebody like got into my car and took my stuff out of here. They took my radio or whatever. And, just uninvited guest type of thing. So in that sense, while there's nothing of real hard value being taken, it is that feeling of like, well, my computer is being used for something that I didn't authorize it to, which brings up the point of like, what if there's other things that you can use your computer's or malicious people can use your computer's processing for? Again, I'm not a tech expert, so I couldn't. My mind's kind of running wild on this, but that bothers me right there. I just found this article on Wired. Looks like it was just posted yesterday regarding this. They're calling it crypto jacking, and there's already. I'm just reading kind of down here. This says that there's already a Chrome extension called NoCoin, created by this developer that blocks this stuff from happening. So basically you put this Chrome extension into your browser and it's going to prevent these sites from doing that, the very thing that we're talking about, crypto jacking. Yeah,
there's also another one. It's quite a popular one on Firefox called uBlock Origin, and they I think they've updated it, so there's a newer version out now that has that same feature added to it. So I think that it's good to give people the option to block it. I mean, most of the sites that do this kind of stuff are sites that we don't go to anyways. But, I think that if I use the example of Wikipedia because it's one of those sites that I've used consistently since like 2005. And I use it enough to where like I would like to donate money to it, but I honestly don't have the money to donate to it. And so if I could like let them use, I don't even know if they would have to use 20 to 40% of the processor. I think maybe if they could use 10 to 15% and be able to, because it shouldn't be a heavy burden on any one particular user because it's distributing that workload that you need to be able to mine the Monero and it distributes it among all the users who are going to that site at any given time. And so you end up having, say you have 20,000 users on Wikipedia at a particular moment. Those 20,000 processors are working at 10 to 15% in addition to what they normally would be. And so all of them are working together to generate revenue for the site. So that way they don't have to use ads because they don't want to use ads, which then they end up having, that big banner that pops up saying, hey, we need you to donate money, which I'm like, well, I'd love to, but I don't have any money to give. I could just hit a little button and say, yeah, you can mine for Monero on my thing. And, it wouldn't even have to be a consistent thing. Like, most modern browsers nowadays, I don't know if Safari does this, but I know Firefox does it, I'm pretty sure, and I think Chrome does it as well, where when you leave when you switch over to a different tab, that other tab just kind of stays in stasis. It doesn't actually keep processing anything. It just stays there until you go back to it. And so that way, it's like while you're on the page, it's mining the coin, and then once you leave that page or you go to a different tab, it stops until you come back to it.
Yeah, I think Wikipedia is a perfect example of a corporation or company or whatever they are that I would be totally cool with using something like this as well, because then they would effectively be able to support themselves in another fashion. Wouldn't have to go asking for people's money because they're just mining Bitcoin in the background. And as long as they're letting their users know, hey, when you get on our site, this is what's happening. Please accept this. And if you don't have to use us. I guess, I think that would be fine. I would, I think probably 90% of people would consent to that, if not a higher percentage. So from that standpoint, yeah, I think it's totally cool, totally viable, as long as the end users are being notified of what's going on and they're cool with it. The more the merrier.
Yeah, that's kind of the key, is getting people to be cool with it, because I think most people would get freaked out by any kind of idea, because they wouldn't necessarily know how it works. It would just be. I mean, honestly, how many people are going to be out there explaining how it actually works? Most people are probably going to hear it and have that knee-jerk reaction that you were talking about of saying, this is my computer. You can't just use my computer for whatever,
Yeah, but I mean, I think they could creatively word the agreements in a way that's simple enough and clever enough to allow people to understand what they're doing. They don't have to necessarily know all the technical ins and outs of it. For example, Wikipedia, as an example, if they did do something like this, could just put up a little bar on the bottom like they do with with cookies, and just says, instead of doing ads and requesting for your money at regular intervals, we are now just utilizing a small percentage of your CPU to generate our revenue for ourselves, so we no longer have to bother you. They don't have to explain that we're mining cryptocurrency, because then you're freaking people out going like, what the heck is cryptocurrency? For people who don't know what it is, if they've been living under a rock. But then you're sort of explaining exactly what you're doing. Hey, we're utilizing your PC to make money, to pay the bills, so we don't have to bother you. Boom. Simple. And then you don't have to freak anybody out. So I think there's ways of doing that.
Yeah, I'd like to see it, 'cause honestly, I hate ads, especially when you go to news sites and it slows everything down. It crashed Chrome on me the other day because I went to, I think it was CNN or Fox News or something, to pull up an article, and the whole thing just went down, which is why I usually use Firefox, because Chrome is bloated and slow. But
I have no opinion. I don't like Google anyways. So I don't really like Chrome, but it's kind of a necessary evil for me. I use it at work, but it saves all my stuff, and I can take it home with me and open my browser at home, and there it is. And I don't have to use iCloud because I'm already using my iCloud for personal use. So it works. But yeah, I agree. It's bloated, and especially when you have if you have a bunch of extensions on it, it's just gonna sort of drag things down. But
you should switch back to Firefox.
Yeah, I had Firefox back in the day. I feel like I haven't used Firefox for a long time. I thought they kind of went the way of Netscape, or whatever that navigator is. That used to be around. Remember, with the big N, it had the planet or something spinning around it, and it would load.
You do realize that Netscape was the predecessor of Firefox, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Netscape went under and it got bought out by what would become Mozilla. I think that's how it went. And then they open sourced the code, and it became Firefox. So
interesting.
Yeah, they've been doing lots of work on it, man. It's a lot faster now. all sorts of good stuff. They've improved security on it. You can read. I'll tell you about it off the air, but it's really good. I'm really excited because I've been using Firefox for years, and it for a long time it was pretty crappy and it was pretty slow. But I stuck with it, and now it's going strong. It's faster. It's better than Chrome. It's more reliable than Chrome ever was, and I don't have to sit here and use Edge on Windows or Safari on Mac.
Well, I'll check it out. I'll definitely check it out to see what it's all about. Cryptocurrency, though, is an interesting subject in itself. I familiarized myself with what it exactly is a while back and sort of did some cursory research because I was thinking about, hey, well, maybe I can make some money doing this. It seems like just about anybody can do it if you have the wherewithal. But as the more that I dug into it, the more technical things got. And like I said, I like to think of myself as a fairly technically competent person. Not by no means am I like an IT, that type of computer knowledge, but I know my way around a computer, the ins and outs of it. And if I don't, then I can Google it and figure it out pretty easily anyway. So it's like, I guess I'm pretty resourceful technically, but I'm not like technically inclined from that standpoint. But the more I got into this cryptocurrency mining, Bitcoin mining, the more sort of like convoluted it got. There's different I honestly, I don't even think I could accurately just explain it to you guys, but I feel like it's almost like it's made confusing on purpose in a way to sort of I don't know if it's like to discourage people from doing it or what, but you had an interesting, we chatted briefly about this a little while ago, and you had an interesting take on it. You said and you brought up a good point that there's only just like with money, well, just like with gold, not with money because you can print more money, but just like with gold, there's and precious metals, there's only a finite amount of Bitcoin in the world, and that's on purpose because its actual value is it tied to something like gold, or is that just because there can only be so much?
What, you mean Bitcoin?
Yeah.
As far as I understand it, it's limited just because it's limited because I'm trying to think of the best way. So as far as currency goes, no matter what the currency is, whether it be ones and zeros in the form of Bitcoin or Litecoin or something like that, or if it's dollars or pounds or yen or seashells, whatever you want to use as currency, you could use cigarettes if you wanted to. The only reason why it has worth is because there's demand for it, and when you have a high demand of something that has a finite amount of it available, then that demand will, the value of it will be sustained longer and more, have more stability over time than something like, a printed currency like we have in this country, where, they can keep printing more and more money, so that it devalues the currency over time because the supply goes up, but the demand remains the same. So ultimately, you end up having a currency that's worth less than what it previously was, which is why, if I took I've got a friend who's got a $1 bill that was it's called a silver note, and it was from the 1920s, and it was worth $1 in silver. So you took that to the bank now, you'd get, I think, like $16 worth of silver out of it, basically. Or no, I'm sorry, I get that mixed up. It would be a portion of silver, so like a very small chunk of silver. Whereas back then it would be like an entire silver coin. But with Bitcoin, it maintains its value because there's a finite amount, but there's also becoming a higher demand for it, which unfortunately has attracted some of the more nefarious actors on the internet with all this like ransomware. Whenever there's ransomware that comes out, they demand payment in Bitcoin, so you have to get however many Bitcoin or however many percentage of Bitcoin to unlock your files. But so what these companies are doing is, I mentioned that they're mining Monero and they're not mining Bitcoin. There's more than just Bitcoin. So there's Bitcoin was the original one. They've kind of forked that off, and there's now Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin Gold. There's also Monero. There is one called Litecoin, and there's a bunch of other ones out there. And so you can mine different coin, and once you get a certain amount, you can, just like you take if you were to go to Europe and you took your dollars and you gave them to a bank for an exchange, you would get the amount in dollars that you gave, you would get that same amount back of what it's worth in euro or pounds or whatever. You could take however much Litecoin you have or however much Bitcoin cash or Bitcoin gold you have and convert it into Bitcoin and get that amount of Bitcoin back. So that is essentially, it works the same way as traditional markets in that sense. But I think it's just because there's a limited amount. I don't remember what the number is, but there's a limited amount that it's if it's not already been reached, it's rapidly approaching that amount. And so a lot of these sites, what they would be doing was they would be, if they were mining on your processor, along with thousands of other people's processors, they would probably be mining something like Litecoin or something like that they could then save up and then convert either to dollars or convert to Bitcoin. Which most people will probably do because Bitcoin is doing much better off in the markets themselves than what these other smaller coins are.
Yeah, so I just did a little bit of quick search here, and on this site Quora.com, there's where you can ask questions. There's this founder of this, it's called Mobius Network, and he answered this question: how many Bitcoins are currently in circulation? And he says as of June 1st, 2017, there are 16,366,275 Bitcoins out of a theoretical total of 21 million. So the 21 million being the number total, so that gives about 5 million more Bitcoins, give or take, to be mined. Now he says here that that's the only supply that there ever will be, and it's still a theoretical supply. He has this complex math equation down here, which I don't even really understand, but I was never much of a math whiz anyway. But he's basically saying that there's also a possibility that Bitcoin is going to split in the late 2017. Is that what you're referring to with the different Litecoin and whatnot, or is that something different?
Say it one more time.
He said that Bitcoin is possibly going to split. It looks like 3 ways, as into 3 separate blockchains, is what he says. Is that referring to the new coins like Litecoin and whatnot?
Well, Litecoin was already established. It's a separate one, but Bitcoin did over the summer split into 2 other ones. It became in the open source community, because Bitcoin, as far as I understand it, is open source to an extent. We call it forking. So you fork a project, which means the project goes this way, and then somebody breaks it off to go that way to do whatever they want to do with it. And so they forked the project, and so Bitcoin continued on their route, and then they turned into Bitcoin Cash, and now there's another one that forked off from it called Bitcoin Gold. And but
it's still all Bitcoin. It's still the same thing.
Well, sort of. I mean, it's a little bit different. It would basically be like if the US dollar was going, and then all of a sudden, half the country decided they wanted their own currency that was still sort of like the dollar. So it went to US dollars west, and it was everything west of the Mississippi. And then they did one for the east that was everything east of the Mississippi, all the states there. And then you still have the main US dollar, which was the national value. So it just kind of confuses it, but it's essentially that same kind of concept.
Interesting.
So they're different, but they're similar.
See, this whole it just illustrates the point of what I was saying in the beginning, which this whole Bitcoin thing is so convoluted and so foreign. I feel it is. There's a lot of similarities to traditional money, and that with exchange rates and all that stuff. But the concept of having money that isn't physical, I guess, is just something hard to wrap your mind around, and then go oh yeah, there's a finite amount. There's 21 million, theoretically 21 million Bitcoins in existence, and it just split into 3 different, Bitcoin money and Bitcoin gold. It's just very, very, very confusing to me, and I'm sure to a lot of people out there.
Well, it's confusing to me. It's difficult to really wrap your head around, and I'm still working on it. You just got to read a lot about it and start to really kind of, if you have a general understanding of how economics work and how currencies work, you can kind of have a bit of a head start there. But you really have to do a lot of reading and a lot of research to try and educate yourself on the background of it and how it works and how it's established. And honestly, a lot of people are probably wondering why you would want to. Why would you even want to get into these kind of currencies, these cryptocurrencies, as it were? And so, for instance, if you were to start mining Litecoin, for instance, which is the cheapest of the bunch of them, I believe, it's currently one Litecoin is worth $58.30. Bitcoin Cash, which was the initial fork, one Bitcoin Cash is worth $340.16, and the original Bitcoin, which is the most valuable of the bunch, one Bitcoin equals $6,072.01. So you can kind of see why people would want to get involved with the cryptocurrencies, just because, like, even if you're not up to anything nefarious, it's a good investment to have if that's something you're interested in. I mean, it's still not nearly as valuable as gold is at this point. Gold is worth, I think, like $16,000 or something like that for an ounce of gold.
1,600 maybe, but not 16,000.
Yeah. Looks like
for an ounce.
1286.
Yeah, I was gonna say probably around 1,200.
Yeah, sorry.
Gold at its peak around the downturn, I think it got close, very, very close to $2,000 an ounce, but that's the highest it's ever been.
Yeah, I threw an extra zero in there, sorry.
Which is crazy when you think about it. I actually worked for a gold buying company for some time when I first moved to California, and the way that the value of gold was skyrocketing. I remember getting married years back and looking for wedding rings, and gold was just so cheap. I don't know what the price of gold was back then, but I think looking at it was around like $600 an ounce. But I could buy like a wedding band for cheap. Like I think I bought my wedding band. I had like a 18 karat white gold wedding band that I bought for like around 100 some odd bucks. And that same wedding band now, if you look, is quite a bit more. Obviously depending on the size of the ring and everything, that's a factor. But yeah, it's insane how much the value of gold skyrocketed and then came back down a little bit, but it's still quite valuable. Never really. Well, I remember when they were saying gold's going to hit 1,200, and it did hit 1,200, and and then it continued to go up. So now, I mean, with a historical perspective, gold is actually extremely, extremely valuable compared to what it ever was.
But if you look at the historical trends of gold, though, gold always remains very stable. Like it goes up and it comes down, but it's generally speaking, if you look at the trends of the value of gold compared to the value of the US dollar or of the pound or anything like that, the national currencies are always, they always have like a very, steep transition, whereas gold is usually fairly steady, Yeah. It doesn't have a big change. And that's why, someone like me who advocates for Austrian economics, that, having a dollar that's based on something substantive like gold is the better way to go, I think, than having the Keynesian model, which is that we have a central bank that controls the interest rates and the currency flow and everything like that. And so we end up having these situations where part of the reason why gold is worth so much right now is because the dollar is worth so little, and that's part of the issue.
Yeah, I was going to bring up that point about inflation. So that's why gold is worth $1,200 where it used to be $600 because the dollar is less valued, less valuable than it was before. But what about other precious metals? So people always talk about the value of money being tied to gold and that it needs to be tied to something, which I agree with. I think it should be. But why gold? Why not tie it to other precious metals? Why not tie it to silver? Why not tie it to platinum or palladium or something like that, where those are also precious metals that have a finite supply? Or why not tie it to all of them? Then you have more money. I mean, how does that work?
Well, you're asking a hard question. I don't have an answer for, but I think part of it is that gold has been the de facto main currency that's always been they call it the gold standard for a reason, and it's because it's how it's been for thousands of years. You read stories in the Bible of Nebuchadnezzar and his statue was made of gold, and you read about the ancient Egyptians and they had stuff made of gold, and you read about the Persians and they have stuff made of gold, and everything was gold everywhere. Just for comparison, we talked about the value of gold right now. The current price for an ounce of gold is almost $1,300 an ounce. Whereas you look at silver for an ounce, it's $17.28. So it's.
But what about platinum and stuff? Isn't platinum more valuable than gold?
Possibly. Let me check.
Historically,
per ounce,
at least for a while, it was.
Oh, come on. They're not giving me the stuff I need right now.
Platinum value is today $926 an ounce. So it is less valuable than gold.
It's less valuable. But I mean, if you look at the trends, here, let me pull this up for you real quick. Hang on.
And we have palladium is $907 an ounce.
All right, let me screen share this for you. I'll show you something here. You and I might be looking at the same website, to be honest. So here's the value of gold over time. This goes back to 1988, and there's some big transitions there. Part of the thing is that I mentioned the fact that we have a Keynesian economic system where we have a central bank that kind of controls everything and manipulates everything, and part of that means that these rates go unchanged until the Fed decides to adjust those rates. And so you can see the places where they adjust it, and all of a sudden it just skyrockets, and then it just drops. And here this is obviously the big downturn in 2008 where the recession started. But even though there's kind of big ups and downs in some areas, generally speaking, it's been very stable over time. You look at silver. Silver, I believe, is fairly similar.
Similar spikes, but yeah, it's any precious metals. The four precious metals: silver, gold, palladium, and platinum. Well, you also see that similar spike in the 30s. I think it's like 33 or whatever when or 32. What was it? 33, 32, something like that. When the Great Depression struck, you saw the value of gold shoot up over $600 and then go all the way back down. It looks like 1970. Is that when we left the gold standard?
When?
In 1970? Was that with Nixon?
Yeah, it was around then. I think it was maybe a little bit earlier. I can't remember when Nixon was.
That I'm looking at that is showing 1970, October 1970. The value of gold is $229 an ounce. And the same thing in 1920, it's about 244. So it's always in these like perceived eras of prosperity where gold sort of like hits its lows. So like we always hear about the 1920, the roaring 20s, and that's where gold sort of hit its low back then. And then it hit its low again in the 70s when money was taken, or the dollar was taken off the gold standard. And then just like, it looks like the biggest spike ever. I did not know this, but it looks like, I'm trying to hit this thing on the nose here. In 1980, January 1980, gold was $21.50 an ounce. So it was over $2,000. Now, I don't know if these charts are accounting for inflation or what, but yeah, it has like these peaks and valleys, because then the valley we see is in March 2001, right before 9/11. Gold was at another low, about $375. So it's like in these areas of perceived prosperity and perceived safety, gold's value is at the lowest, and then it spikes when there's turmoil and uncertainty, which we all kind of got familiarized, I think, with the recession. But it's just really interesting how that happens. It kind of makes you realize that gold is like, and these precious metals are going to be so valuable if we ever run into problems with our society, or God forbid, like a sun flare, sunspot that explodes and just hits Earth dead on, and we lose our all of our power and stuff like that. What are we going to be doing? We're going to be trading and bartering, and whoever has the gold is going to be able to own everybody. And gold is, as I understand it, is super concentrated. Like the vast majority of the known gold in the world is like, it's like governments have it, specific governments have it, right? Like China and Russia. Am I off on that?
I mean, every government has some gold, It's just kind of a common commodity for them to have.
But like, can you imagine, like, if something like that happened where somebody were to detonate, nukes or EMPs or whatever, where we lose like vast amounts of power grid all over the world or the country? It's like, and you're kind of thrown into like another, not dark age, but pre-1900s when electricity was invented type of deal, when you really do have to rely on gold or things of value. I mean, I can only imagine the unrest and just the danger of being alive during a time like that.
Yeah, that's why it's important to learn some life skills and be prepared, and hopefully you have some good friends who are neighbors, so that way they don't turn on you. Hopefully,
But it's interesting because if things were to happen like that, think of how how dependent we are on technology, right? To do everything from get our food, and food is one of the most important things. I mean, if a human being doesn't eat for more than we get grumpy after a couple hours if we don't eat, right? But once you've been without food or without sustenance for an extended period of time and there's no end in sight, people do crazy things. And if you're not able to buy food or trade for food or whatever, in a situation like that, I feel like things could get really bad really fast. Like people just kind of going crazy on each other. My mind goes back to what was it, that a particular soccer team where their airplane crashed into the mountains and they ended up eating each other eventually.
I'm not familiar with that story.
Yeah, that's just a really vague description that I gave. But there was some soccer team. I just Google it or something. I'm not going to do it right now. But there was, they ended up crashing, and their airplane was en route somewhere, and they crashed in the mountains. And this was a long time ago. But they basically ended up cannibalizing each other after being up there for so long because they needed to survive. Sort of Lord of the Flies type of stuff. But I think the human will to stay alive is like greater than when you get into these desperate times. So I don't know. We're going from gold to all this, but I'm sort of going into sort of like an apocalyptic scenario here. I don't know why, but
well, I mean, you don't have to go apocalyptic to see it, though. I mean, like as soon as you started bringing this up, the first thing that came to mind was Venezuela, with everything going on there now. I mean, their socialist utopia collapsed, and now they don't even have food. They don't have toilet paper on the shelves, and we're not immune from that here either, which is, I think, something that's important for people to realize. I don't think people realize just how fragile our system is in this country, and not even talking government-wise, but talking like just our infrastructure and our the way that we've set everything up in our businesses. Like, 30, 40 years ago, grocery stores had a stockpile of food in the back where they would they'd get a shipment of food in, and they would get a food shipment maybe like once every week or twice, or once every couple of weeks. And now we do these. There's basically slimline ordering processes now, and we did this when I worked at. I used to work at Starbucks, and so we used to do the same kind of thing there, where you get 2 to 3, maybe 4 shipments a week because you order like very, very bare minimum of what you need to make it to the next delivery date, which might be in 2 days. And so you don't have a lot of stuff on hand in the back. And so even grocery stores do this now because it keeps the cost down overall of stockpiling all this stuff. So if there's ever a recall, you have very minimal stuff that you have to send back. And if something goes bad, it's usually only a couple of items where it's not an entire pallet full of stuff. And so you end up having situations where if there's a crisis like this happening, people are going to storm to the grocery stores to get as much food as they can to stockpile, because most people only have a couple of days worth of food in their house. And once those grocery stores are cleared out from what they have on hand, which is not as much as you might think, then they're not going to be able to stock anymore because they don't have it on hand. Everything's going to be stuck at the warehouse.
And what happens when there's an impending hurricane?
Yeah. I mean, like we had when an Irma came through. We caught the outer part of it as it was coming past us, and when it hit South Carolina, I mean, it was not bad. We had some strong winds, and we had a bit of rain here and there. I think one county kind of farther out from where we are had a hurricane or a tornado touchdown as a result of it, but no one got hurt or anything like that. But it was like 4 or 5 days before the grocery stores had bread back in the store. And so it was one of those.
Day and age.
I know, it was like, really, it's Columbia, South Carolina. We can't compensate for bread shortages here. It's like, it was just interesting to see how it played out. And there was water stockpiled everywhere, even though people knew that we weren't going to get a whole lot of bad weather. But it's just that panic mentality that sets in because people aren't prepared for things.
Yeah, and you could see easily, I mean, good grief. I mean, if something were to happen, like you said, our infrastructure is so all over the world, the infrastructure is so fragile. It's much more fragile than we realize. All it takes is a natural disaster of any significance for us to see the fragility of it, and for for people to kind of get a little bit testy and stuff. I mean, you see the gas station lines, you see the supermarket lines, you see shelves of food and supplies being out of stock, like you said, because of these slimline orders. Which, by the way, next time I go to a Starbucks and they're out of the drink cup caps, I'll know why, because that happens every once in a while, where they're like, sorry, we're out of cups, we got to give you the little frap cup where it's the bubble. And I'm always like, how did you guys run out of caps? Can't you just like reorder it and be smart about it? But with slimline ordering, that kind of makes sense, where during a given week maybe you're a little more busy than you anticipated, so you run out of them.
Well, and some managers are just incompetent. I'll be totally honest. I've worked under quite a few of them, and they just don't know how to order, which, like, it is what it is. But I worked at Starbucks for 7 years, and, overall it was a great company to work for. And they had some policies that I didn't like, and they had, but that's any company really. But I mean, I worked there for 7 years, on and off a couple of times. And generally speaking, I had a really good experience working there, but man, they had some difficult managers in a few of those stores. And yeah, so anyways, I digress. But we're at about an hour and a half. We should probably call it for the night, unless you had anything else you wanted to talk about.
Just one last thing. Just today, I think the news broke that Donald Trump was going to release, or is planning to release, at least some or most of the classified documents regarding the JFK assassination, which I think for anybody, you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to appreciate this, is a pretty exciting prospect, to see, hopefully get some form of closure on this tragic event that happened, what was it, 50 some odd years ago. So that was pretty exciting to me. He posted it on Twitter. He says he's going to release the Kennedy assassination files, which apparently they were supposed to have been released back in 92, due to a law that was passed. And then I guess they just never got released for one reason or another that we don't know. So I guess what they're going to do is they're going to sort of look through stuff and make sure that there's nothing in there that could be potentially harmful, which, gosh, at least, they'll be releasing something. So, but it sounds like they're not going to be releasing everything. I don't know if you've heard that or not, but what's your take?
I heard it this morning. It popped up on my phone, and I got a little giddy, I'll be honest. I don't know. I'm glad that he's releasing it, but to be honest, I would kind of like to know what actually happened in Las Vegas before I really concern myself with what happened 50 years ago to JFK. I mean, I think anyone who believes that there was a third shooter, or it was the CIA or something like that, they're not going to.
Not Vegas, right?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
I could see the disconnect there. No, with the whole JFK thing, I think people pretty much made up their mind on what happened, and I don't necessarily know that him releasing the documents that say otherwise, it's going to really change anyone's mind, especially if there's anything that's redacted in it. If there's anything redacted at all, then I think people are just going to be like, it's a cover-up, whatever, and they're not going to believe it. But, I mean, honestly, I feel like it's been, 2-3 weeks now, and they still don't know what the motive was for this shooter. There's all these conspiracy theories about Las Vegas, and to be honest, some of them make a lot of sense, and they're not being forthcoming with the evidence, with the information. They're not really. There's a lot of holes in the timeline. There's a lot of holes in what they're saying happened, and even the media's been picking up on it. And I don't know if that's the media trying to cash it in their direction so that it takes attention off of them. But
it's very interesting how this whole timeline thing is played out, and I'm leery of anything that the media actually picks up on. Like, the fact that the media is actually picking up on this is a little disconcerting to me, because normally they're pretty ready to sweep this stuff under the rug. But given the fact that this shooter was clearly not of a nationality that, he is what he is, I feel like this is being held on to, and who knows, maybe it is more than what it seems. I don't know, but maybe this is something we could touch on for another episode. Maybe our next episode, as there continues to be more information released. at this point, it's just a lot of speculation, but definitely hope that I know that we both hope that this picture clears up and we can see more clearly into this, so we can prevent things like this from happening in the future. And yeah, maybe we can talk about this next time as the information comes out.
Yeah, if no other craziness happens, which tends to happen when we have a 2-week gap in between shows. But I'm actually I'm graduating in December, so I'm hopeful that maybe after that we can maybe even start doing this weekly, because it'll kind of close the gap a little bit, because there's always so much to talk about and people complain when the videos are too long. But anyways, I'll go ahead and close this out unless you had anything you want to add.
No, I think that's great. Enjoyed doing the show. A lot of very interesting topics here. Hopefully we didn't get too controversial for anyone at any point. If we did, our sincerest apologies. We're not trying to offend anyone. We are just taking this is just a show about Dan and I's take. We're just two wise guys with opinions who happen to share them on live stream. So again, we appreciate all of our viewers. We appreciate all of you. I look forward to interacting with more of you as we get more viewers, and I know Dan does as well. And in constructive formats, and not being critical, where we're not critical of each other or tearing people down, as I know tends to happen on the internet because it's so easy to do. So that's one of the things Dan and I really are wanting to do with a show like this, is to keep people informed as much as we can, and to inform ourselves, so that we're not ignorant people out there just making comments and trolling all over the place and upsetting people and just causing more problems than need to be out there. So yeah, Dan, close us out.
All right, and we want to thank everyone again for tuning in. I'm not sure if we had any viewers tonight, but if you're watching this later on, thank you for checking it out. If you're listening to this on audio, then again, appreciate you listening. If you like what you hear, I would invite you to check out some of the other episodes, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And you can find us on our website. It's twowiseguys.org. You can also email us directly at twowiseguys.org@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at twowiseguyshow, or you can tweet me directly at Reborn Jumpman. We're also on Facebook. It's at facebook.com/twowiseguys. If you want to find the podcast, go onto Apple Podcasts or whatever your preferred podcatcher might be, and you can also just type in Two Wise Guys, and it should pop up with our logo there. You'll see it there. And be sure to subscribe, and if you wouldn't mind, also leave a rating and a review, just so that way we can kind of get up in the rankings and help more people to discover the show. And also, if you're listening to the audio versions of the podcast, you may have noticed that there is some new music that debuted on the last episode and will also be on this one. So I want to give a big shout out and a thank you to Mr. Ronald Jenkins, who gave us special permission to go ahead and use his music for the podcast. And if you like it, you can go find his stuff at ronaldjenkins.com, and you can get MP3s and CDs and all that good stuff. You can even get licenses there to be able to use it on your own stuff. But he's got some cool music on there. And finally, if you guys want to help support the show, help make it better, because we poll, and we need all the money we can get to make the show better and to get the better equipment to make it better, you can head over to patreon.com/twowiseguys, and you can become a monthly supporter there for as little as $1 per month. But there are also monthly giving levels at like $5, $10, $15 per month, each with their own set of little rewards on there as well. And you can also check and see what kind of goals we have set up, and how close we are to meeting those goals. So that's all we have for this week. We want to thank you all again for checking out the show. And if you have any questions, comments, rebuttals you want to throw our way, you can leave a comment on the Two Wise Guys page itself. You can also send us an email or reach out to us via Twitter. Thanks again, and we hope you guys have a blessed week.
Good night. Be blessed. Until next time.